Nostalgia Street invites you on a retro ride that's more than just a trip down memory lane.
Uncover life lessons and personal growth stories that stem from our collective past.
So you can live a richer, more connected life today.
Whether you're a 90s kid, an 80s teen, or simply young at heart, you'll find something to relate to in each episode.
Now, here are your hosts, Vince and Jeff. Welcome back to another episode of Nostalgia Street. It's the holidays, so we've changed our lights to reflect the jolly times.
Jingle, jingle.
We have a special guest today. Her name is Jessica. That's all we're going to tell you for now, as we usually do. So quick shout out to our sponsor. Guess who that is, Vince?
Must be those guys at Forefront Studios.
Bingo, you are correct. So at Forefront Studios, we're in our brand new studio. We're going to have to stop saying that. We've been here for 2 months.
We're going to say that like a year from now. Brand new studio.
Probably will. Like a baby. It's a brand new baby. Anyway, Forefront Studios, we love to create content that fuels our client success. And Nostalgia Street's one of our latest babies. I guess it is kind of a baby.
Yeah. Well, it is where we share the stories that shape us. And to kick us off, I got a really fun question for our guest. All right, Jessica, I know that Tupac and Biggie are a point of contention between you and your husband, but what we want to know is which celebrity is actually not dead and what are they doing?
Ooh, who's not dead? Elvis is not dead.
And what's he doing? What's he been doing this whole time?
He's probably been a cake test taster for a while.
Like that show Ace of Cakes, that's Elvis.
Yes, it's him. He's the producer.
I did see something recently, and there's a guy out there that looks like old Elvis. I mean, his hair has changed up a little bit, but he looks, I think you could probably prove a case that he is not dead.
I mean, there could be a certain sect of aging gentlemen that kind of turn into looking like Elvis over time. So anything's possible.
It's like a perpetual cash generation machine if he's getting royalties,
I mean, just throw him in a white suit and it's cash money all day.
I don't know any Elvis songs. I was going to, sorry, beyond my time.
That's the best part. All right, with no further ado, our guest today is Jessica Myers with an S, correct?
Correct. We're plural.
And she is executive director?
CEO.
CEO of Porchlight.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that much, much more later on. It's kind of cool. But let's kick off. Tell us what was Jessica like as a little hellion?
Yeah, young
Were you
Jess.
a little hellion? Were you a troublemaker with your parents?
I was not the hellion as a small child. That would be my older sister. But I would be the dangerous one because on paper and according to all of my teachers, I look squeaky clean. But really, I was the one organizing the keg parties.
You were the instigator.
And I was the one getting everything going. So
we asked about developing young Jess, but you're organizing keg parties as a 5 or 6 year old.
Wow.
I mean, all the more power to you.
This is going to be a long episode.
I mean, I'll make sure it doesn't turn into therapy. I do remember a time when I was in preschool in our church hall that was separate from the church. And there was a boy that he was just kind of teasing me that whole day. And I brought for show and tell that day my older sister's Miss Piggy puppet. Now, this was a 1980s Miss Piggy puppet, and her head was solid plastic. And I just across the face slapped him with Miss Piggy's head on my hand because I had taken it for a while and then I was over it and I whacked him and then I went, oh dear, I'm in trouble. And I remember hiding under the table and skipping recess because I was the heat is coming. I'm in trouble.
Was Justin okay? I don't know what his name is. I'm just making it up.
We'll call him Justin. Justin fared just fine. I'm sure he's a great husband and father right now.
But he never lets his kids watch the Muppets.
But he sees Miss Piggy and he
Bacon is not allowed in their house. Bacon is not allowed in their house.
The Muppet flashbacks is just really traumatic for him.
So what was growing up like?
In those early years, we were on our dairy farm. So my early years was, I think the one adjective is feral. I mean, we got up in the morning and we just ran wild and came home with burrs in our hair and had the toughest feet because we just never wore shoes
Yeah.
and
Wow.
just getting into a lot of trouble. We had a lot of leeway on the farm. It was pretty
No.
great.
So where was the farm at?
In winter.
Winter.
So the middle
Winter,
of
South
Tripp
Dakota.
County. Yep. Right north of the North Dakota border. My grandparents told stories that Lawrence Welk got his start as a band director at the polkas that they fell in love at in the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
So, yes.
I didn't know Lawrence Welk was from around
Lawrence
this way.
Welk was got his start in South Dakota, and to our neighbor Bob Barker
Yeah.
was from Rosebud, which was not too far to the west of us. So lots of famous people.
Okay, you want to see something funny, Jessica?
Please.
Watch this. Vince, tell us who Lawrence Welk is.
He's related to the Welches who make Welch's grape juice.
So close.
You're wrong on both counts.
So close.
It's Lawrence Welk. And you have no idea who Lawrence Welk is, do
And
you?
then
No.
here's the perfect tie-in. I'll tell you this. So on Saturday nights, after we had our Saturday bath, we would watch Lawrence Welk, and then the Muppets would go on right after it. Come on.
Oh,
Full
dang.
circle.
I mean,
Full
just tying
circle.
it all in.
That's pretty good.
So from what
I knew you would know Lawrence
I
Welk.
don't know. So from what I've heard of winter, it can be tough. Like people, like folks just scrap in because that's why it's called winter, right? Because only the winners get to live there.
Winter chicken dinner.
Well, the reason why winter is called winter is because there was a train race. And the race was between naming the town Winter or actually Lamro
Okay.
was a neighboring town, and the train made it to Winter first. And so that's why it's called Winter. What I appreciate the most about my experience in Winter, and it has carried me through my entire childhood and work life to this day, is that if you want to know how to work, make your livelihood off the land. And I will show you people that know how to work. And it was amazing that there's 6 of us, there's 5 girls and 1 boy. And all of us there was no shortcuts to work. Like we were doing chores. We were responsible for all of the calves. So we got home from school and you put on your chore clothes. We called them the chore clothes.
Yeah.
And then you just got to work and that was it. So it never even dawned on me as I grew up that I should have a gimme. Now, if you were to talk to my husband now, I haven't mowed a lawn in 20 years and I don't do garbage and I don't do car stuff. But out on the farm, I mean, we did everything no matter what.
What was the worst chore that you recall?
I hated doing chores in blizzards.
Oh,
I mean,
that's good.
because living beings have to eat every day. And so it didn't matter if it was raining. It didn't matter if it was snowing. The calves still needed to be fed. And so when you're freezing, and I don't know if you've been in the middle of the state, it's pretty flat. And so the wind is just whipping. And so I remember straddling the neck of a calf, holding its head up and putting a bottle in its mouth, like that's how you feed a calf. But the milk is dripping over onto my gloves and instantly freezing
Eesh.
onto my
Wow.
gloves. And so we would get into the house and take off of our winter gear and it would be frozen in place. And it's just, what that lesson really taught me is that just because something's happening doesn't mean that the world stops. You just still have to do it. You just have to do it under unfortunate circumstances. And that lesson has shown up over and over and over.
Yeah,
But chores in the winter, oh my gosh. Now that it's dipping a tiny bit cold, like it's 30 here, it's going to get 60 degrees colder at some point this winter. I still say, no, inside. I would like a blanket.
Well, you've earned that.
Yeah.
So do you sometimes look at your children when they were in that age range and go, you guys have no idea how good you've got it?
I really have. I will say my internal monologue says, do you know what I was doing when I was your age? Like it's that proverbial story that every kid's like, oh,
Back
did
in
you
my
walk
day.
uphill without
Yeah,
shoes on? But I mean, I really do feel like I did. And so I look at it like this. My grandfather's parents showed up on the land in a Model T pulling a covered wagon.
Wow.
That's how they showed up. And they got the next generation a little bit further. And my parents got us a little bit further. And now my job as a mom is to get our kids a little bit further.
Sure.
And so my kids are actually the first generation off the farm. They have no farm experience.
Yeah.
But I can see the lessons being put in them. Like their work ethic and their desire to be involved is really heavy. And I know it's because that has transferred from my work ethic.
Yeah.
And it is sometimes really frustrating for me to say, oh, you all have iPhones. Cool. It's a different childhood, but I think every parent and child relationship will say that.
So you had a phone in your house, right? Growing up, indoor
Grew up in
plumbing.
the 1920s.
In the house, or did you go to a separate building?
Well, I will say this. We did have one phone. We did have one bathroom. That got a little tricky once we all became like tweens, teens, and we were all trying to get through the bathroom. But I will say by our barn that is still there to this day, the original outhouse was right by there. And I knew exactly what that was, and I was so grateful I didn't have to make that run that so many other family members had to in time gone by.
Well, and you had to share the phone. That was the odd part for me growing up.
Yeah.
I think we had two phones. One was in the kitchen and one was in my parents' bedroom, but you could never go in there. You had to take all your friend calls because they were afraid you're going to plot to take over the world or something like that.
I mean, you didn't?
I tried not to.
Oh.
Just one country at a time. That's what we tried to do.
We had a really long phone cord, and there were some spots that were a little bit more tender than others because it got slammed in the door
Yeah.
to the nearest room. And so at one point we had tinfoil on it I don't know, we thought that helped. I mean, but the cord was 40 feet long by the time we got done stretching it as far as we could. So
then you're out of the outhouse.
Free wireless days.
that's right. That's right.
So when you weren't doing the chores and being rowdy, what were some of those favorite games that you played with your friends or your family?
So in the evenings, I remember a lot of board games we played Battleship a lot. Guess Who was a big one. And it was really interesting how those 1980s games were. There were like two women on Guess Who. So if you said, "Are you a woman?" and you'd say yes, and like 90% of the board would go away because diversity is a woman. So that's all that it is. And so Guess Who, Battleship was a lot of debates. The game Life, and I don't know how many people are consistently playing the board game Life, but that has really changed.
Yeah.
I remember the 80s. I know this because we now have Life for our kids. But in the 80s game, the only way to make a ton of money was you were required to have money and to have kids. Like that's how you became a millionaire in Life in the 1980s. But now kids are optional. The spouse is
Interesting.
optional. And I was like, oh,
Whoa.
Parker Brothers.
Yeah, Parker Brothers.
They evolved.
21st century.
Okay.
Wow.
Here we go.
Right. So there were a lot of board games. Learned how to gamble. Played a lot of blackjack. We had a big jar of pennies that we would play blackjack. Please don't take me to Vegas. I would be really horrible because I just don't care to gamble. I don't care about blackjack anymore. But the way that we consumed entertainment and technology was so different. And I catch myself all the time talking to my kids and saying, that was before the internet. Like we had 3 TV channels and one was a little scrambly.
Yeah,
So when we got a dish on the farm, and I'm talking one of those huge, we had to pour cement.
Big boys.
Yeah, to get a dish, and we got like original Nickelodeon and original Disney Channel. We just thought, we are multimillionaires.
Yeah.
We did
Wow.
it. And so before we got the dish, I mean, it was 3 major networks and it was 2 major networks and PBS and maybe NBC if the stars aligned.
Is it true you're too far out in the sticks to have cable? Like, was cable even a thing? It had to
Cable
be
was
satellite,
not a thing.
right?
No.
Wow. Yeah, I remember those big dishes.
Yes.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Really interesting.
Oh, the before times.
The before times.
Yeah, before the dinosaurs came.
That's right. And you didn't have GPS on every a piece of equipment or humans or any of that.
So when you got to the, let's say the teens, did you have any idea kind of what you wanted to be, or were there others around you? I want to be a nurse. I want to be a teacher. I want to, anything that you really wanted to be or you thought you were going to be?
I will say this. I was actually really heavily influenced with PBS because PBS had a ton of diversity on it. And so they had, like if you watch old school Sesame Street and if you watch all of the old science shows and stuff like that, and even Mr. Rogers, when my favorite ones were where he took you to a factory.
Did you ever wonder how crayons were made? I've often thought about people making crayons. I'll do some more of this later, but I'd like to show you some people making crayons.
And he showed how to make crayons. Or my favorite one was they went to a saxophone factory and they taught how they made musical instruments. Like that was absolutely fascinating to me. I didn't necessarily have a profession in mind, but I knew this, I mean, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I knew I wanted to be the boss.
Yeah.
I knew,
Okay.
I knew that I could lead, and I knew that I just naturally had that in me. I mean, I have vivid memories of going to childcare when I was little, and I would come home from school and I was like, all right, everyone, get in line. We're playing a game. And the little kids would follow in line. I mean, that was happening at a really young age. So I knew that in order to lead and to get moving, I had to leave. Like I had to get off the farm because I was like, I mean, when you're talking about a 12 and 13-year-old girl, I mean, I had giant 80s bangs and frosted fingernails, and I was watching Oprah. Like, I was ready to bounce out. Like, this was not enough stimulation for me. I knew that I was hightailing it to somewhere where there was humanity.
Yeah. Luke Skywalker. Get off the farm.
Get off the farm.
Go to a different planet.
See, that's what I don't understand, what you're saying right there.
So you've been an instigator forever then?
Forever.
Keg parties as a 5 or 6 year old to...
I mean, I knew how to secure alcohol at 5.
What were some of the trends in that time period and around you? What were the trends like? I mean, we had one episode where Jeff literally threw his leg on here and showed me how to cuff a jean because I've never seen that before.
Wait, you don't know how to peg jeans?
Well, the way that he was cuffing them is not the way that we cuff them.
Okay, you fold them in half as tight as you can to your ankle because that secures longevity in the cuff. And then you twist. Like I would come home from middle school and have bruises on my ankles because I had tied them so tightly.
Yeah, if they're not tied enough, then they come undone. That's just not cool,
I mean,
right?
We'll just do a double stack and call it a day.
I mean, I was this tall in the 6th grade too. So
Oh, gosh.
pants I mean, all of my pants were high waters because the fashion industry didn't think anybody was over 5'5". So, I had a limited real estate to tie roll my jeans.
Limited mistake.
We'll be right back.
So what were the fashion cues in rural South Dakota as you were growing up?
Oh, let me paint you a picture.
Let's do it.
So we'll start with my hair. I had the most epic 80s like mall bangs, like those big, like I preferred the straight up on the side and cascaded down. Like that was my favorite.
Huh.
I now watch TikTok videos of young people trying to figure it out, and people my age are saying, "Oh, your hair's too healthy and too clean." Like our hair was just a fire hazard at all times. Like if your curling iron sizzled when you like put that hot iron through that hairsprayed hair, you knew it was going to be a good day. And
Oh,
so,
God.
I mean, the amount of melted chemicals on a 1980s
Oh,
girls curling iron.
If you have pictures, send us.
Oh,
We'll put it on the
instantly.
We want to throw them in here.
Great. I'll show you. I'll show you like 7th, 8th grade.
Did you watch a lot of MTV?
Oh, we didn't get MTV.
Oh, do you know who Nina Blackwood is?
I of course I know Nina Blackwood because she was the first VJ, but
Yeah.
she now has a show on XM.
Oh, is that
So
right? I
all
didn't know
the
that.
on 80s on 8, they
Like
all have
your hair as you're describing. That's what I'm
Yes.
thinking about. Is Nina
Yes.
Blackwood back in the day?
Yes, I mean there were a time that my older sister and I, who was a huge fashion influence on my life, because when you're on the farm, older sister knows everything.
Sure.
Our hair would get so high that we would lean up against the wall and blow dry it, so it would just be like straight up in the air. We would get super frosty lipstick from Pomida, because that was where you bought your health and beauty in winter. So we got pink frosty lipstick. My absolute favorite shirt on the planet that I mean, it's in a landfill and is never going to ever disintegrate. It was a white shirt. It had a lace overlay and then fringe. It was fringe on the
Fringe
front.
and lace.
Fringe and lace.
For lace.
I mean, nothing was see-through.
Yeah.
It was like, it just had like a white overlay and then like a V fringe on the front of my shirt. And I wore them with my acid wash Z Cavaricis that folded over at the top and a pair of white Reeboks. So yeah, like I look
see
like every 80s girl possible.
Z Cavarici. That's a gene I haven't heard for a long time.
Oh yes.
I'm lost.
Please Google Z Cavarici because the top of your pants folded over. Like you buttoned them up and then the front folded over.
Yoga pants?
No,
No,
they were
no.
denim.
But yeah, like yoga pant jeans. But
Young man, you have so much to learn.
We'll show you the ways.
So what's a group? I mean, everybody answers the popular ones, but like, what's like a group that you like but wasn't super duper popular, but you were into them in that time frame?
I will say this as something that I loved at that age and that I have passed on to my children. My children call it goth music, which is so funny to me because, I mean, at that time you're beholden to whatever's played on the radio, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Casey Kasem's Top 40 and Rick Dees, like that's all you had.
Rick Dees. Wow. I
So-
heard that for a while either.
Yes. Well, I mean, there wasn't a lot of entertainment, so you memorized it and heard all of the Clearasil commercials because there was no fast forward or skipping ads at that point.
She's
So
speaking my language here.
you guys are on nostalgia street. I'm like, where are you
yeah,
guys?
well, this is what it is. So like I listened to all of like hair bands were totally my jam.
Yeah.
However, I loved The Cure.
Yes.
And the Smiths.
Yes.
And the Pixies and all of these bands. And a couple years ago, I introduced it to my oldest daughter. She was like 17, 18 years old at that time. And I said, you need to listen to the Smiths. And she went, I don't know. Because she kind of looked at me like, this is mom's music. And now she's like, Mom, I super love the Smiths. Have you heard of the Pixies before? And I was like, yes, my job is done.
So Robert Smith, he's the lead singer for the Cure. Have you seen what he looks like today? He looks like somebody's old grandmother.
I was going to
aunt.
say he looks like a beautiful old lady that
Yeah,
loves
yeah.
red lipstick.
Yeah, he's still
So-
got that red lipstick and his
Yeah.
hair is all.
But there's a wonderful video of him this summer where, because they did that, for Gen X, it was a famous Cure tour, and they fought Ticketmaster to keep their prices, ticket prices at a reasonable
Yeah.
rate. And there is a fan video of him singing one of his love songs to his wife off camera.
Oh.
Like, it's so sweet.
That's cool. That's cool.
So, yes, I do know what he looks like, and
So
I still support
the
him.
Pixies, remind me of something that they sang.
Oh, I'm
'Cause
not
I'm
singing.
super familiar with
You
the
can hum it.
Smiths,
No, trust me, I'm absolutely not going to.
the Pixies. We've always talked about having a computer out here so that we
Or
can
some
make
lyrics.
references to stuff.
It's the been trying to meet you. Oh, that's going to drive me crazy.
We'll have to have
We're gonna have to please.
The Pixies.
It's one of the best songs, and I am absolutely blanking on it, but it's just perfectly that late 80s, early 90s, like emo goth music. It's pretty great.
Have you heard of the Violent Femmes, perhaps?
I love the Violent Femmes, and there is now a shirt that all of us Xer ladies like. It's all over my social media right now, and it says, "I forgot what 8 is for," and that's a line in one of their songs, and it's just.
I'm just thinking
great.
of one song in particular. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it was "Why Can't I Get Just One?"
Oh yeah,
Bleep.
yeah. There's one song that is so diabolical to this day that my children were trying to tell me that their lyrics were so much worse than the lyrics of my youth, and I went, "Oh, friend, let me introduce you to early rap, and then let me
or Prince.
let me tell you the lyrics to a song called Add It Up." And my daughter said, "Well, what is this?" And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to tell you what this song is about." And I tell her, and she goes, "Oh, it's so much worse than I thought it was going to be." And I was
Sweet
like,
summer child.
"You're welcome." But I will say this, to this day, we'll play this music that, on the radio, it's in the car, we're playing it, and we're driving. I specifically remember listening to Prince, driving to Easter to my mom's house. And because as you
nothing
do,
goes together like Easter and Prince.
you
Purple
listen.
Rain, Purple Eggs.
No, it was Sexy MF that happened to be the song that was on. And my husband and I, who were driving it to my mom's house, and we said to the kids, "Don't tell my mom we listened to this song." Like, I'm still saying that because I was like, I mean, my mother isn't going to do any, like, I'm grown,
Right.
but I was still like, "Don't tell that we're listening to this music."
Prince was scandalous.
So you told us off air you met your hubby. Was it in high school?
It was in high school.
It was.
Yes.
All right. Now is he from Winter?
No,
Or Winter, sorry.
no. In the 8th grade, my mom and my sisters and I moved to Vermilion. So
Vermilion, okay.
I graduated from school in Vermilion. My husband was, so he loved basketball, and so he was a statistician for the girls' basketball team.
Okay.
I hated basketball. And so I did everything I could to not play, yet still be on the team. And so I benched a lot. And my goal, it was a huge disappointment because, I mean, I was 5'11". On paper, it looks like I should love a tall person's sport.
Yeah.
And I was singing like chorus songs in my head during basketball. So I ended up sitting at the end of the bench next to the statistician and started talking to him a little bit more. And then we had journalism class together. And, he was funny. Like he just wasn't that, I don't know. He didn't act like a high school boy.
Yeah.
He was just, I don't know. He was just silly and funny. And so we were getting to the end of the basketball season, and winter formal was coming up. And I knew that there was no way he was going to ask me out.
The probability is 0.
It was less than
statistician.
0.
Statistically speaking.
Yes.
From the statistician.
Right. I knew at 17 years old, there was no way he was going to ask me out. And I was like, I'm young and progressive. I'm gonna ask him out. And to this day, I remember standing in my mom's kitchen. I remember the outfit that I was wearing. I remember that his mom answered the phone. And because that's, when you called somebody's house,
Yeah, it doesn't exist
you
anymore.
were talking to all of their family members before you talked to the person
The
you actually called
gatekeepers.
for. Right.
Yeah.
And I said, "Matt, he calls me Jesse." I said, "This is Jesse. You want to go to winter formal together?" He goes, "Sure." I was like, "Okay, cool." And
Smooth.
the rest, I knew on that first date. So we went to winter formal, and that night, it was a fine high school dance where like everybody's just awkward and weird, and Everybody put their disposable cameras, and if you were fancy, you had a 35 millimeter camera. They were all on the table because nobody had phones and the internet didn't exist. And we were at we went out to a friend's farmhouse after it, and all he did was he grabbed my hand to help me walk over some ice to get into the car. And the second that I held his hand, I knew I was going to marry him.
Boom.
First
Nice.
date, I went, oh, it's you.
Dang.
Like, I don't know
You
how to
zinged.
describe it. That was it. And we've never broken up. And in 2 weeks, it'll be 30 years from that first date.
Nice. That's a good story.
It's been
good story.
great. I mean, it's not like we haven't had, we're really great at fighting, but we know in the end, the goal is to stay married, and we absolutely adore each other, and nobody makes me laugh harder than my husband.
So 2 weeks, you'll be in the kitchen calling again.
I'm going to bust out my old French dress that I wore. Actually, I can't get that dress on anymore. I'll probably just be telling him to go take out the garbage or do some outside things.
So speaking of formal, in your questionnaire, you said one of your pivotal experiences was planning a prom or planning the prom.
Yes.
Walk us through that.
So, in my quest to be in charge, I don't know if that's a problem or
It's a lifestyle.
it's a something. But one of the things that I knew that I could do was, as junior class president, your responsibility was to organize prom. And so the prom theme was Arabian Nights, but like a week before, we figured out that some people thought that it was KNIGHT and other people thought that it was NIGHT. So we had two different nights happening.
Oh boy.
I mean, if that's not a perfect high school story,
Yeah.
I don't know what is. But I remember specifically standing in, every class has a class advisor, and our class advisor had told me something just kind of off the cuff because, you've got your checklist of we must have this for dinner and this is what the decorations are going to look like, all of these things. And one of the things that he looked at me sincerely and he goes, "You are not going to make everyone happy." And I went, "You are absolutely right." And it allowed me to just release that expectation of myself to be able to say, "Oh yeah, I am not pie or ice cream or a delicious dessert." Everybody loves a good dessert.
There are people out there who don't do pie or ice cream.
I mean, you could be a milk dud. You can be whatever you want to be. Pick your dessert. But, it really released me forever of feeling like I have to be everything to everybody because that's setting yourself up for failure. So there was no way that I was ever going to live up to that. And I, to this day, I'm still really grateful that he had said that to me.
That's a great life lesson.
Shout out to Mr. Garfield. I'm just making up names for all the people in your life.
Do you want me to say his real name?
Sure.
Mr. Donahoe.
Mr. Donahoe.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mr. D.
Mr. D.
Yeah.
Drop
that's
it in truth bombs.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
So now fast forward into the past 5 years or so. How did that's really fast forward there.
Yeah.
How did Porchlight come into existence?
So Porchlight came into existence because I saw a gap. So in that quick fast forward, there's a couple things that had happened. So, having this really rural life, growing up I'm a fifth generation South Dakotan. So, being here for as long as we have and knowing that we could take up space and we know how to work. And I say it like that on purpose because once my husband and I graduated college, we hightailed it to New York City. My husband went to grad school there. I worked in literally the height of Rockefeller Plaza in corporate America to keep the roof over our heads. And then after he had graduated, we moved to Chicago. We had all of our children in Chicago. We have 3 beautiful daughters. And there was a time where when we had our third kid, we were on a 3rd floor, 2-bedroom walk up apartment, and we were putting our baby to sleep in a kitchen every night because that was the last room with a door.
Wow.
You know, we were at max capacity. So we had this tiny footprint that our family was living in Chicago. And my husband and I always knew that our urban life was going to be temporary. And so we chose to come back to South Dakota. And because we wanted to raise our kids with the values that you learn in the Midwest. One of the I don't think it's a real subtle secret, but a lot of the executives in Fortune 500 companies are Midwesterners that moved to the coast. And Midwesterners are successfully recruited out of the Midwest because we are such good workers.
Yeah.
And it's because we've done a lot of labor work in various forms. I mean, if you were to go around Sioux Falls and ask people what they did, they're probably from a small town and they probably have corn detasseled or worked beans or whatever it may be. And when we moved back, we came to Sioux Falls because that was going to be the smoothest transition. About 5 years ago, I mean, we're getting close to, that was almost the beginning of COVID. But, you know, my life was starting to change. My kids were now getting a little bit older where I could kind of change my career. I had been in sales and recruiting for decades. At that time, I had switched into working in an office as a healthcare recruiter. And I thought, you know, how could I, you know, looking back on your own life, and I thought, how could we have gone from living in New York City? How could we get back to winter? How could we be living in Staten Island in our little apartment and say, I want to go back to winter. How do we get there? And there's not that vehicle. You can get to the coasts of South Dakota. You can get to Sioux Falls and you can get to Rapid. That's fine. But how do you get to the middle? And so Porchlight really started because my partner and I, we were in a leadership program. She came from working in the extension office at SDSU. And she said, you know, I really want to make a guidebook for rural communities to prepare themselves for new jobs. And I said, well, I want to bring jobs to rural communities. Let's team up. And so we teamed up and we created Porchlight. And now we have a third partner, and it has been like, I could talk about Porchlight for, I think every founder says that, could talk about it forever and ever, because it is such a love story to my childhood and saying like, how do we show people the path back home? And that's why our name is Porchlight, is because when somebody's gone, you leave the light on for them. And we want to bring these people back to wherever they choose to call home, whether it is their hometown or if it is the new hometown that they're going to call home. We want them to see that you can live in Highmore, South Dakota, population 692. You can live in Winter, South Dakota, population 2,500. That these tiny towns are not flyover country. Some of the most incredible people are choosing to make their lives and raise their families in these rural communities. And I'm happy to say that now my farm does have broadband connectivity, and you know, you can have a cell service out there. And so it's really creating a path, something that we didn't have. And I don't think that my husband would be too keen on, you know, taking his life and moving it out west. But it's not, I would be really hesitant to say that nobody wants to move out to these rural communities. It is far from it. There is a waiting list to get into rural communities, and that's the biggest misconception about rural.
Really interesting. So this whole pathway of childhood and growing up, going away, and now coming right back again. So do you live in Sioux Falls now?
Live in Sioux Falls. You
do, but you get over. So you said you have a farm that you guys kind of get back out to.
Yes.
That's very cool.
Yeah. We're, in fact, I mean, I'm traveling all over the state, going to rural communities and working and seeing all of the really cool things. I just heard a story with one of our potential clients where they are doing everything they can to save the grocery store in town because they want to be able to have local food accessibility. Yeah. I mean, that's what some of the communities are working with, is how do we keep our basic services? And how do we show industry? Because COVID, I mean, the beauty of COVID is that the workforce has shown they can work, workers can work many times wherever they want. And that has leveled the playing field for rural communities. And so if we can show that family that's living in a 3rd-story, 2-bedroom walk up in Chicago, like, hey, you could go out and buy 240 acres and have feral children, and you can still keep your Chicago salary in the middle of a farm in Winter, South Dakota. Why don't you come out? There would be a line of people that would want that for their families.
So speaking of Chicago, I know that you have a tradition in your household.
Yes.
That we've recently shared it with other people.
Yes.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I would love to. So, Vince and I actually have lived in the same neighborhood in Chicago.
Really? I did not know that.
Yes.
Same neighborhood.
Same neighborhood, years apart.
Yes.
And it was one of the most diverse neighborhoods in America. The street is called Devon Avenue, and you can go from one side, you can see women in saris. There are women in burqas. There are Orthodox Jews,
Yep.
Russians. I mean, you
Greeks,
name it.
everything.
There's a strip of that road where there's not even signs in English. Like it's beautiful. If you want to just experience the world through your stomach, you go on this road.
Devon Avenue.
Devon Avenue,
Bring
Chicago.
Pepto-Bismol.
It's amazing. And so there is a beverage. We can call it a beverage.
I think you call it a beverage. Experience.
There's a beverage in Chicago called Jeppson's Malort. And it was sold by an old Swedish guy that blew out his taste buds from smoking.
Blow them out.
And Malort was the only thing he could taste. And so it is a Chicago cult favorite. It is awful. It
Straight
tastes
diesel.
like a liquid ashtray. It continues to burn in your esophagus all night.
Oh my
and
God.
If you come to my house for the first time for dinner, to hang out, whatever, I'm going to tell you exactly what we do because it's just awful and we love it. We welcome everyone by offering them a shot of Malort. And we offer that shot in my children's
Oh, no.
my children's communion cups. So as they've taken their first communion at church, they make these little 1-ounce cups that are the perfect shot glass. And so when you come to my house, most people end up saying, "Oh God," anyway, because it's so terrible. It wasn't that long ago, Vince and I were able to share Malort with a whole group of people, and it is something that I feel they'll be remembering forever.
My lords.
Yes.
Oh, my lords. I'm going to hell.
We'll have to bring it on the show sometime.
I have a bottle. Just say the word and I'll bring it over.
Yeah, you go first, Vince. Let's see what that looks like. So we're close to our wrap up here, unfortunately. But is there any childhood memory that we haven't had a chance to talk about that just makes you feel nostalgic?
I think there's one really like nostalgic experience, and it was playing the original Nintendo. It was actually in my brother's bedroom. We got the Nintendo Power Pad, so we were able to. And Vince, so you know,
Thank you.
the Power Pad was this plastic like 4x4 with like 9 circles on it.
Like Twister.
It was like electronic Twister,
Okay.
but it plugged into the original NES, and you could play track and field on it. And so I remember playing triple jump, like it's this, triple jump, 3 jumps. But what we would really do is we would jump onto my brother's bed, jump onto my brother's bed, so we could get long jumps. So I just remember like hours and hours of playing Nintendo. Like Saving the Princess was like Everest.
Sure.
And so it's just, or like the game Contra. Do you remember Contra?
I do.
And
I
like
do.
the cheat code that you had the, what was it? Up, up, down, down,
It's been
left,
too
right, left,
long.
right, BA start. I think that's what it is. So
Second cheat code we've had shared on the show.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I think that is it. It was actually referenced in the movie Wreck-It Ralph, which was so
Yes.
spectacular. That was the code to get into the lockbox. When I saw that, I mean, my kids were little; they didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
But my husband and I screamed when we saw that. So it was, I mean, just hours of gaming. And I think that's really important to remind people that we're still gaming. We're just doing it on our iPhones now.
Right.
And our kids are gaming. They're just doing it with way better graphics than we ever did. So
better.
it just continues. I wish I would have kept the Nintendo. I don't know where it ended up because now I think it's worth a ton of money.
They've got newer versions out that I haven't seen the Power Pad though.
Or the Power
For the
Glove.
old
Do you remember the
ones.
Power Glove?
I do not.
I remember I don't remember, but I've seen the glove.
Yes.
It sounds
mean-
familiar. It sounds like Thanos.
It was just really.
Like you plugged it in and you had
Yeah.
a glove and you could manipulate things.
Yes.
Wait, who are you, Lawrence Welk? You've come back to me.
You did it.
Where have
Vince,
you
you did
been?
it.
I was talking to Bob Barker for a little bit.
Oh my Lord. All right, we're at our time. Well, thank you for being on the show. It's
Thank
been
you for
a
having
ton
me.
of fun
Yeah.
to hear you talk about things. And I'm like, Vince has no idea, but I'm loving it over here.
This is a show where I'm like basically feeling like I'm a bystander. I'm learning. It's
great.
education.
Well, I think in review, you get to have an awesome middle school picture of my epic hair.
Yes. Definitely needed.
We should have some Malort and play Nintendo.
I think so.
I
we
think
do that.
that's what it is.
I think we did.
Yeah. So thanks again, viewers, for your time and your attention to the wonderful experiences I just shared. We will plug her information and Porchlight in the show notes below. And until then, continue to stay engaged, and we'll see you next time on Nostalgia Street. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If you're on iTunes, please take a moment and leave us a rating and review.
Head on over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. You'll get access to engaging visuals that complement our podcast content.
Thanks again for tuning in, and we look forward to having you with us on our next episode. So until next time, listeners, stay curious, stay engaged.
Never stop walking down Nostalgia Street.